Since the 2022 Stanley Cup Championship for the Colorado Avalanche, the number one problem for this team has been figuring out the goaltending. The team traded away Darcy Kuemper, who was a huge piece in the Stanley Cup victory for the Colorado Avalanche, and ever since we saw him go out the door of the Mile High City, we haven't been able to figure out our goaltending between the pipes. But now, after a crazy move from GM Chris MacFarland, which is something that the league hasn't seen in over a decade, he essentially reworked the entire goalie tandem mid-season. The Avs now have a golden opportunity with some of the best goaltending this team has seen in a few years to make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs and potentially even bring the Stanley Cup back to the Mile High City again. We're going to break all the latest down in goalie news for the Colorado Avalanche right here on Avalanche Digest. But before we do so, make sure that you are subscribed to Avalanche Digest here on Digest Media. All the latest Avalanche news and updates right here on Avalanche Digest. You don't want to miss any of the videos that we are producing. Look at this stat here. 71% of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed to Avalanche Digest. Only 27% of you guys are subscribed that are tuning in and watching. If you're watching, clearly you're interested in all the opinions and the things that we have to say about Colorado Avalanche hockey. So exit out of this video, hit that subscribe button, come back, and keep watching all of the content that we create, and make sure that you are subscribed to get all the latest news on Colorado Avalanche hockey. Let's dive into the conversation around the Colorado Avalanche goalie tandem. Let's flash back all the way to 2022 when Darcy Kuemper was the starting goalie for the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, this was the year that the Avs made a miraculous run in the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs and ultimately took home their third ever franchise Stanley Cup. And Darcy Kuemper played a huge role in that. He was an amazing goalie throughout the playoffs, someone that the team could rely on when maybe offense and power plays and things weren't necessarily going the ways that they needed to. Darcy Kuemper played an absolutely amazing Stanley Cup playoffs. And honestly, as a result of the outcome of the Stanley Cup, and kind of everyone's thoughts and opinions were that Kuemper was going to stick around and he was going to be a strong franchise goalie and someone that was going to continue to develop into even better of a goalie than he already was. And the fact that he was able to win us a Stanley Cup between the pipes behind obviously our amazing roster and our deep lines, it was expected that he would be sticking around and that he would be a long time tenured goalie for the Colorado Avalanche. And then the front office made, in my eyes, a hasty decision. They ended up trading him to the Washington Capitals. And I think that it was kind of a cocky move that they got rid of Kuemper. I think that they thought that they didn't need a goalie at the caliber that Kuemper was and that they could have something a little bit smaller scale and still do as well as they did during the Stanley Cup playoffs that they won in 2022. So they end up trading Darcy Kuemper to the Washington Capitals. And then after that, since we traded Darcy Kuemper away, there's been struggles within our goalie tandem, and we've seen goalies kind of come in and out that haven't necessarily worked for the Avs. I mean, you take a look at Darcy Kuemper's last 5 games with his now team, the LA Kings. He was dealt to Los Angeles after we initially dealt him to the Washington Capitals. But in his last 5 games, he had 2 shutouts, and his save percentage has been above 95% 4 out of those 5 games. Obviously, one of them, he's still above the 900 mark at 90%. But Darcy Kuemper having an unreal season and continuing to develop as a very strong goalie in this league. He's among probably the top 10 in the league. And so going all the way back to 2022 and looking at that decision that Chris MacFarland, Joe Sakic, and the front office made, holding on to Darcy Kuemper definitely would not have been the worst decision in the world. Nevertheless, the Avs decide to trade him away, and we end up picking up Alexander Georgiev from the New York Rangers, and the hope is that he can become our franchise goalie. Georgiev had a really strong start with Colorado. He was a promising goalie and was doing really well playing behind our deep roster and all of our really strong players. And I think there was a lot of conversation that he was going to be the next, big goalie for Colorado, and that he was going to be able to develop into this really strong vet goalie that was going to give us the trust that we needed between the pipes. And he even, like I said, he even started to show that. You look at the playoffs last year when we played Winnipeg in the first round, beat them in 5, and then we moved on to a tough 6-game series against Dallas where we had a really strong fight. Georgiev played really well in that series, but we end up losing in a Game 6 double overtime, heartbreaking loss. But even after that second round exit, you think of Georgiev and you think of the end of the season performance that he had specifically in the playoffs. It was promising, and there was hope that he was going to be able to continue to perform at a high caliber moving into this season that we're in right now. And you look at his career stats, 295 games played, 149 wins, 15 shutouts, under 296 goals against average, and a 90.4 save percentage. It's promising, and there was hope that playing behind a strong team that's consistently making the playoffs every year in the Colorado Avalanche, he's going to be able to develop into a strong goalie. That was not the case. He started off the season extremely poorly, was letting in a ton of goals every game, not a trustworthy goalie, let in 8 goals in the first game against Vegas. I very vividly remember the concern and kind of the thoughts I was having watching that first game, and I knew that goaltending was going to be a problem for us this year. You look at Georgiev's stats this season, obviously traded to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for Mackenzie Blackwood about a fourth into the season. 41 games played, 13 wins, 0 shutouts on the season, a 3.64 goals against average, and an 8.75 save percentage. To be quite honest with you, those are putrid numbers. That is not what you want in a goalie, especially with a team like the Colorado Avalanche who are looking to make noise in the playoffs in the next few years here. They have a very deep roster, and they're trying to do everything that they can to bring the Stanley Cup back to Colorado, and Georgiev was not going to be the answer to that. I think Georgiev going to the Sharks is a great move for San Jose. They're in a rebuild phase. They obviously just drafted Macklin Celebrini, the number 1 pick overall in the draft, who's been developing quite nicely into the player that he is, and Will Smith in the previous year. So sending Georgiev there along with Kovalenko was a strong add for the San Jose Sharks. Georgiev will hopefully continue to develop as a goalie and move into a role where he can start playing better with a team that's a little bit less of a high caliber play than the Colorado Avalanche. But nevertheless, Georgiev being traded midway through the season was a small piece of a master plan that Chris MacFarland had, which was essentially to rework our entire Colorado Avalanche goalie tandem, midway through the season. It started with trading Justus Annunen, our backup goalie, to the Nashville Predators, and then it was followed by trading Alexander Georgiev and Nikolai Kovalenko to the Sharks in exchange for Giovanni Smith and Mackenzie Blackwood. And we obviously get Mackenzie Blackwood in return for this deal, and the hope for MacFarland, Sakic, and the rest of the front office was that a strong, confident goalie like Mackenzie Blackwood needed to be playing with a team that was much more high caliber than the San Jose Sharks. And boy, has that shown so far this season. Blackwood comes over to Colorado and has been absolutely unreal for this Avs team. 48 games played, 24 wins, 3 shutouts, a 2.49 goals against average, and a 9.15 save percentage. Folks, those right there are the numbers that a playoff goalie needs to be putting up in order for a team to have any fighting chance in a cup race that's going to be extremely tight this season. So having Blackwood on our team now is just a small piece of this huge rework of our goalie tandem that Chris MacFarland decided to do for the Colorado Avalanche this season, and it's clearly been working. Obviously, the other piece of that, Scott Wedgwood, who came in the Justus Annunen trade, where we sent Justus Annunen to the Nashville Predators in exchange for Scott Wedgwood. Wedgwood, 19 games played, 10 wins, 2 shutouts, and a 2.49 goals against average, a 9.06 save percentage as well. One of the biggest issues with Mackenzie Blackwood, a lot of talks around the league with this lately, is he going to be able to stay healthy? His health has been a huge issue dating all the way back to when he played with the New Jersey Devils. And something that's really promising about Scott Wedgwood is he's the kind of guy that can come in and be clutch between the pipes during the playoffs if Mackenzie Blackwood is having health-related problems and is not able to play during the playoffs. Scott Wedgwood has been absolutely unreal, making highlight reel saves for this Colorado Avalanche team. And if Mackenzie Blackwood is unable to perform in the playoffs, Wedgwood is an extremely strong goalie to fall back on. So the Avs essentially did something that the league hasn't seen in over a decade. They reworked their goalie tandem midway through the season, completely wiped the 2 goalies that they had, and they essentially made very strong moves and very strong trades that gave us much better goaltending, better stats, and the goaltending right now is just a small piece of this perfectly aligning puzzle that the league is starting to see with this Colorado Avalanche team, where this is a now or never scenario. Now the goaltending is dialed in, our roster is dialed in. We had an amazing result at the trade deadline, acquiring a ton of really great players such as Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, and even the longtime Avs veteran Eric Johnson. But like I said, the goalie tandem rework, which has been very strong and worked very well in our favor here for the Colorado Avalanche, is just a small piece of what this front office is trying to do in terms of a cup or bust mentality, where the Avs are giving it everything they can with their roster right now today to make another strong push at bringing the Stanley Cup back to the Mile High City.